Okay, so hello everyone. We would like to start. Okay, please take a seat if you can find a place. Or you can stand if it's okay for you. Okay, so I'm Aurelia. I help these meetups happen, and thank you everyone for coming. And thank you for being a part of this community that is growing bigger and bigger. I remember last meetup I said it is the biggest one we ever had, and now I have to say that again, because now it's the biggest one we ever had. And this time it was quite challenging because we had to change a place, we had to change a date, but I'm happy that at least we saved our Vitaly, who will tell his story today. And what I wanted to ask, I would like to know how many people we have, but I'll not count now, but at least could you please raise your hand if it's your first product management meetup? Okay, cool. And please raise your hand if it's not your first one. Okay, we have some kind of retention as well, so awesome. Yeah, and today we have one awesome presenter. I want to thank Eddie Balchukonis for introducing us. I also want to thank Stasis, who helped to organize live streaming, because we have people who cannot attend, and I believe in sharing, and even if you cannot come, you still can learn and see what others are doing. So today Vitaly will share his story. He is a co-founder of Smashing Magazine. It's an online magazine for designers and web developers, and I'm sure he has what to say. So please, welcome.
I could use the mic. Thank you so much for having me. So I feel like a stand-up comedian already, because I really hate having a mic in my hands. It's like I'm supposed to make jokes now, and everybody's supposed to laugh. I'm kind of getting used to it, but I really hate it. So I'm really happy that we have a huge turnout today. It's great to see so many faces here. It's actually I have to walk like really 180 degrees. It's a lot of people. That's cool. Really happy to be in Vilnius as well. Actually, so for those of you who don't know me or don't know my story, I actually moved to Vilnius in September, so I'm actually permanently live here since September 15th or 16th. Doesn't mean I actually spend a lot of time in Vilnius, to be honest, because I keep traveling a lot still. But approximately 10, 11 days of my every month are actually here in Vilnius, and I actually really like it. So this is me, at least this is how I used to look like back in the day, right? I'm co-founded Smashing Magazine, online magazine for designers and developers, back in 2006. And at the time, we had a lot of, we had no idea what we were doing, but we actually had a lot of motivation to do something. And today I would like to kind of share a little bit of a story of what we did, including some very personal photos, not intimate, but personal photos, about how it all came to be. And maybe you can actually learn a lot from that, or maybe you can actually see how it evolved over time. Because we did stumble upon some problems, and we did stumble upon some solutions that we had to discover, and it took us quite a while to figure it out. So this is what we're going to talk about today, but I do want to get a little bit more personal first, and look into where I'm coming from. Because this is the place where I used to live for a while, for 15 years, well, more or less. I was born in Minsk, Belarus, and then I moved to Germany, and then I traveled all over Germany, and then I traveled all over Europe, all over the place. Mostly here, for whatever reason, and also in London as well. And in the end, I ended up in Vilnius. Why not? Because it's, beautiful. It's great. But this is where I used to live for a long time. And as you can guess, it was in Germany, and it was in the southern part of Germany, very close to Basel, Switzerland. It's really beautiful. It has an amazing old town. It also has a great nature, so it's wonderful. It's, you would ask yourself, why the hell would you actually want to move? Well, the reason why I wanted to move is because I didn't feel happy at the point. So I decided to get rid of all my stuff, and I actually did that. I sold everything I had, and it was really great because my secretary at the time, I was actually thinking about moving away, right? So she just prepared a contract, termination agreement with the owner of the house that I lived in, and I just signed it, and I ended up, living in an apartment without having one to move in. That was interesting. So I ended up spending approximately 1 year basically traveling with this all across the world. The interesting thing about this is if you think about all the things that you have at home, the most important things can be summed up right here. This is kind of my life in here, everything, because everything can be digitalized, right? So all my books, all the things, I actually just digitalized it. And it's just a few diplomas and a few personal things that really matter to me, right? So this is kind of what was left. And I started traveling, and I traveled a lot, and if you think about all of this, right, you think, oh, this is amazing. We should all do this. This is the story that you should be, this is how you're working then, right? You're enjoying your wonderful laptop, you're working on the beach with a cocktail next to you, and everybody's happy, and it's great. This is how everybody should live. Well, it's not quite like that. You do get to see things like that every now and again, and even things like that, right? But it's actually not quite, what you should be expecting. It can get quite tough as well. But I do like kind of collecting things that I find across the world. For example, I like seeing things, like movable things and things that are not movable. This looks like a face to me, and sometimes it's even place. It's kind of cute. Sometimes you end up, seeing things like that, kind of moving. I don't even know what it is, but I think it's really cute in a way. I really, really like science. I really do like science. Sometimes I don't understand science. So I really don't know what this, well, I kind of know what this means. I don't know why we have a shark in a fountain. I really don't know. I have no idea what this means at this point. I mean, this is not allowed, but this is allowed for whatever reason. And then here you can do, well, you have turtles. That's cool. Well, what does it mean? I have no idea, right? So you should not let fish or turtles in the fountain, I guess. That's kind of weird. It's actually in Barcelona. It's kind of strange. And sometimes you find this really huge, massive signs. I really like signs. The bigger, the better. This is a big one. This is a big W. I really liked it. World's bar, why not? If you can afford it, go for it, right? Sometimes buildings have big numbers. I'm not sure why, but, why not? I mean, and it's not only there, it's actually, I think it's in Riga. Here is one in Basel. They really like this big signage. I really like that. It's actually pretty cool. And people tend to play a lot with letters and signage. I kind of like it. And sometimes you find little angles and weird drunk letters and really big letters and more letters. And I really like letters. And I really like letters, even if they're drunk. That's fine. But also sometimes you find these interesting stories happening all over the place. Like, you are just another brick in the wall. Just written somewhere in the wall in the bar. Why not? Or this. I really like this. This is kind of fun. I'm not sure. I have no idea where it was, but I really took some time to take a best snapshot. And as you can guess, I was drunk. This is the best snapshot I could get of this, right? And sometimes also signs, like this is, I have no idea what we're going to do today sign. Right? What does it mean? I have no idea. And can you explain it to me? I don't know. That's just weird, right? But also, posters, like posters, different posters, old posters, more old posters. I really find it all fascinating. So you can can imagine how it is for me. Like every single time I go to a new city, I try to place things like that. And it's really interesting because I also try to discover little patterns, little, stamps and things like that. And you can find so much stuff, like so much inspiration everywhere. We tend to go to websites to get inspired for our new product design. Why? I mean, we don't need that. We can just go outside. It's much more beautiful. This is beautiful for me. This is not so much. I still have no idea how this interface works. It's like you have to roll this, but not too fast and not too slow, right? Because the speed actually is the interface that you're using in order to move from one thing to another. This is really strange in France. I also like to go to museums. It's a bit too much about me, I know. I just want to show some pictures. We are going to talk about what I want to talk about, don't worry. It's going to be fine, I promise. So I like going to museums, and I like taking pictures of signs that prohibit you from taking pictures in museums. That's a lot of fun. And also, wine is kind of a big deal. Sometimes you get a lot of wine. Sometimes you have huge croissants, like you do in Barcelona again, and coffee, and also, of course, coffee, whatever it's called. So I actually approached some people who are working in a cafe and told them that this is really beautiful. So that girl who was actually creating this foam, she decided to impress me next time. So she does it for soups now as well. And, this is great. I also end up getting into trouble in supermarkets because I like taking pictures of groceries. For some reason, police doesn't like me taking pictures of groceries. But I do, because you can find a lot of interesting stuff in packaging design as well. This is kind of cute, I think, in a way, right? I probably should jump. This is getting weird. So, but in the end, of course, most of my time is actually here in the airplanes because I'm flying so much. While our team is working in Freiburg, and this is what our office looks like, right? It's very friendly and cozy and green, and it's Freiburg. It's like the city, which is the warmest city in Germany, and it's actually very nice. I just really wanted to move away from this place. This is actually me. Oh, there's an interesting story about this duck, by the way. We moved to a new floor, and then we actually wanted to, put all the tables and all the chairs and everything first. And so we actually tucked it away in above the desk, above the shelf, and then we forgot that it actually exists. It took me actually 2 years. It took us 2 years to realize that there is a duck still there. So it's kind of fortunate that we took a picture of it, right? So, but the point is. So what is all of this? Like, how did we move from one place to another, right? So when did we start and why did we start? And it's actually a very fascinating story, I think, because it has a very interesting beginning. Because for me, my personal start was right here, and I'm not sure how many of you can recognize this. Anybody? Who knows this? Yeah, pretty much everybody, right? Oh, it's getting funky. Okay. Wow, this is great, isn't it? Actually. So when I was a kid, I was living in Minsk in Belarus, and my father is a physicist. So we had this modem dial-ups in 2004, 2400 and 16,000 and 400 and so on and so forth. And we kind of connected in some illegal way to a hub that we could be using in order to connect to bulletin board systems. How many of you know of bulletin board systems? Okay, I'm probably the oldest person in the room. That's okay. And FidoNet and stuff like that. And it was really cool because for me, we could do stuff like this, which was pretty amazing. And I could connect and I could actually exchange messages, because email didn't work the same way as it does today. Like the way FidoNet worked is you are a node, right, in the system. You can connect to a hub, and that hub is going to connect to the next hub, and that hub is going to connect to the next hub, and so on and so forth. So it took approximately 3 to 4 weeks for a message to get from Minsk to New Zealand, right? And then the same amount of time to get from New Zealand to Minsk by kind of walking from one hub to another, which is kind of interesting, right? And in the end, I actually really started looking into what I should do with my life. It was about time to decide, right? So I stumbled upon this little website, which literally changed my life forever, and I think this is still one of the most impactful websites I've ever experienced. It was 1998. It was a really big deal. When I saw this for the first time, I told myself, I really want to do this. I really want to do this, right? Who think that this is cool still? Well, one person, 2, 3, right? But because you could do that stuff on the web, and it was pretty remarkable. This website still exists, by the way. You can totally check it out. So when I discovered that, I really wanted to do something like this. So I did what everybody does. Of course, I decided to pick the right tools, right? So I went to a shop, and I actually bought a perfectly legal version of all Adobe products for $1. or something. It had image styler, it had InDesign and whatever the, Photoshop and so on and so forth. And everybody around me was telling me one thing. Everybody was telling me, you should try that thing. It's really cool. It's called Photoshop. And I said, no. I'm not going to use Photoshop. I don't want to use Photoshop because I can do something else. So I started looking around, and there were kind of a few really creepy, weird tools. And there was also one tool which was called Adobe Image Styler. How many of you know of Adobe Image Styler? Well, I do. I spent a lot of time with this tool. It was a really big deal. Unfortunately, it has some major flaws. First of all, there was only one version of Adobe Image Styler. Adobe Image Styler 1.0 built 1.0.036. It was the only build that went public at some point. That's it, right? That was a little bit of a problem for me because I actually learned to work like hell with this tool. I could do everything. Like really everything. So I was designing websites in 1998, 1999, 2000 with Adobe Image Styler that nobody was using at the time. It had some major problem that actually prohibited me from using it later than 2006 or 2007 because I kept using it until 2007. And the main problem with it was, well, it had a major maximum canvas size of 800 pixels times 600 pixels. That's kind of limiting, right? But you can still do a lot of stuff with it. So I stuck with this little tool. And I really felt, compelled about it. And when I discovered it, I was really happy. Like really, really, really happy. Because I could do some crazy cool stuff on the internet, right? And the first thing I did was this little page. How many people actually appreciate the beauty of it? Well, it still works in pretty much every browser. It doesn't look particularly cool, maybe. Right? But it does contain a lot of information, so you can actually get from one point to another, right? But then, of course, things evolved, and this is kind of the design I made for my brother just 2 years later. And if I look into it, it's actually not that bad. I mean, the font size is small, right? But it's really not that bad, right? And it was 2000 or so. And if you look into the code, this is what it looks like. And I guess that many of you will be familiar with this little code snippet, like with the non-breaking spaces and font attribute, font element and stuff like that. Good times. And spans, it's great, right? It's really great. Built in 1999. Well, why not? So, but okay, so I started building websites and I actually earned something as well. And also, actually also was writing articles for a few magazines in Belarus at the time. But then my parents decided to move to Germany. So we moved in Germany in October 2000. And this is when I said, you know what, I'm great because I know Adobe Image Styler and I know how to build websites and web design. So I'm just going to set up a little portfolio, and this was my portfolio website, which had exactly one website, but of course it's portfolio, right? And I'm just going to do something with it. And I also set up a few other projects. So I don't know if there was something like that in Vilnius, but there was a thing called Profit Seller where you could try to you advertise a product, and then if somebody buys this product, then you're getting a cut from it. So I thought, this is great, I'm going to be a millionaire, so I'm just going to put it, and I did this stuff in Flash as well, and Shockwave and all of it, right? And I thought, this is going to be a big hit, because, I'm a web designer, that's great. It didn't work out. I earned exactly €0 from this. Oh, Deutsche Mark from this. It kind of taught me, though, how to, use Flash and how to work with Flash. I don't do Flash anymore, don't worry. But it was pretty cool. I even had an HTML version for people who were not cool enough to use Flash. So that was pretty cool. Didn't earn much from this. But actually, it was a really interesting time for me, because Internet Explorer 6 came out recently, and it was actually a pretty good deal, because Internet Explorer 6 was capable of many, many cool features. That was really interesting. However, many things were a bit weird, so I didn't feel really compelled to actually do a lot of stuff in web design. So this is how it would usually go, right? You're going to a party to meet people because you're young and you want to meet people, and you say, hey, my name is Vitaly and I'm a webmaster, because everybody's a webmaster these days, because everybody's creating websites. So because I was creating websites, so a webmaster. So this is the response I would be getting. This wasn't cool somehow. So I felt like, people would say, well, seriously, you can do better than this. I'm like, okay, did not what I was expecting. So what is actually wrong with, being a webmaster? And then people would say, well, it isn't something you can really be proud of. That's not what you want to hear when you are 20-something, right? Everybody can do it, right? And it's very interesting because at this time it was a really big deal for me. I felt like, well, the excitement that I had back in the day when I actually started designing websites really faded away. And the moment I started talking to people and talking about that I'm a webmaster, right? Because it wasn't really cool. However, I had a problem. I was young and I needed the money. I wanted to do something with my life, and I decided to do something. So I thought, well, okay, webmaster, this is a stupid thing. It's not respected. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to drop it, and I really don't want to do this now. Maybe I can do something else, right? Maybe I can become a hardcore PHP developer. Because PHP was cool these days. Like, webmaster is not cool, but learning PHP and using PHP was cool. So I spent a lot of time learning PHP and all the good patterns and everything I should be doing and so on and so forth. But then I realized I'm really bad at this. When I got any requests from clients on writing PHP, I really produced mediocre work and I really hated it. I really didn't like it. I wasn't really good at it, and I'm still not. I'm just not a good backend developer. So it turned out I'm pretty bad. However, I still had this problem that I haven't resolved because I was young and I needed the money. So I was lucky because at the time when all of this happened, 2003, 2004, right? All of these techniques, and I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with them, all of these techniques in front-end development came along, right? Sliding doors and spriting and Cipher. Who remembers Cipher? Anybody? Okay, not the right crowd. That's okay. That's okay. It's just me. That's okay. But all these techniques were really, really cool for me at the time. I was really like jumping all over the place trying to figure out how it all works. So I was spending nights and nights and nights, because I was studying at the time as well, trying to understand all of this. This is where I learned web design, actually, like really learned web design, just by spending months trying to figure all of this out. All right? So all of these techniques really made a difference. And when I started playing with them, I really understood that I want to do this for sure, like really, really, I really want to spend a lot of time doing this front-end stuff. And it was really impactful for me because I knew now what I wanted to do. So this was, again, one of those moments, right? So the most important step I did then, when I understood that I really wanted to do front-end development, was to set up this little web developer's handbook, which was really popular at the time. I mean, this tells a lot how old I am. But it was really popular at the time with a shiny button right here, right? It was on Slashdot, it was on Dig, it was on all the pre-social media blogs that are extremely popular at the time. Lifehacker and TechMeme and whatever they're called. It was really, really big hit, which also brought me a lot of traffic, of course, but also a lot of respect from the community. So I also set up a blog, which looked like this. And I started writing and blogging about this stuff, the things that I learned in my projects and the things that I actually learned from other colleagues, right? And at some point, I was thinking maybe, because I'm blogging anyway, we could set up a magazine or like start something like a publication or blog that would actually approach many people across the world. Not just me, because it was just a personal blog, but something a bit more profound. So we just set up a little WordPress blog, right? Which looks like this. This was actually appeared in late September, early October. This is actually the first design of Smashy magazine back in the day. And as you can see, it was just, bootstrapped over a weekend, nothing too fancy. And we just put a few articles in there, and nothing, that was pretty much it. We didn't expect a lot. This was pretty much it. However, because I was designing and developing at the time, I actually really tried to figure out what resources and tools and techniques I could use in order to make my work easier. So over Christmas, and this is not a joke, over Christmas I was so bored, I thought I have to do something. So I found a few techniques, CSS techniques, that many people out there were using, but obscure ones. You would spend maybe, 5-6 hours really doing research, clicking through the links, trying to figure out what's interesting, what's not. And I would collect all of them in this really not fancy, but really dull list, which contained a link and image, and 53 times that, right? But it was really important for people who didn't have access to all of those techniques. So they actually kept bookmarking it. This only blog post actually brought us the real kind of, not respect, but real acceptance in the community. People really started coming to us, and people really started actually following us, which was kind of a big deal. I mean, considering that this was a design blog, it didn't look very designy at all, at least not to me, right? And as you can see, there is nothing too fancy about it, but it was really useful at the time. It wouldn't work today, right? I think, personally, it wouldn't work today. But it actually did work at the right time, because I think that it was just the right time and the right idea implemented in the right timing. So it got all over the place, and I don't know if any of you remember Dig at all? 2.5, 3, 4, 5 people? Dig was huge, and now it's nothing. Right? This is how things change. You know what? There's one thing that really interests me. We tend to think that Facebook is so important, it will never fade away. And I'm pretty sure that we will not have Facebook in 5 or 10 years from now. We will have something else. I mean, we had this before, and it's going to happen again, right? Well, MySpace. Who is using MySpace? All right, still the same person. You're really freaking me out at this point. I mean, there are many things that I'm pretty sure that we have many things that are becoming kind of hype, and then they just fade away. Like Google Wave was supposed to be a big deal, fade away. Google Plus, is anybody using Google Plus at all? Okay, not you, that's fine, right? But it's really interesting. I'm pretty sure this is going to happen to many, this is going to happen again and again, right? So we decided to do a redesign at some point, and this was a redesign. Just not much different, just added the Advertise with Us button, more or less, right? And many different tags, right? But we did something really nasty, something that I'm not proud of, but which really helped us to, set up the company later. We started selling links. It was 2007. As you can remember, I was young and I needed the money, right? So this brought us money, like literally brought us money. It was all of those really, how are they called, black hat, weird SEO, search engine optimization companies, really willing to, give you a lot of money if you just put a wonderful link to a bad credit computer on your blog. That didn't sound like a lot of work, right? So we started adding these links. And we actually really earned a lot of money at the time. Like, maybe from 3 links alone, we maybe earned, I don't know, $8,000 a month. Like, it was a really big money. Really big money. Now, think about Google AdSense. When we started doing advertising with Google AdSense, that was, brought us something. Now, Google AdSense is peanuts. I mean, I don't know anybody who is really earning money with Google AdSense anymore. Do you? Okay, nobody wants to admit that they know somebody who earns a fortune with Google AdSense, but that's okay, because I really don't, right? However, it brought us a little problem, because just a few weeks after we started adding these, links in, and we cashed in all the money, Google kicked us out of the index for almost a year. It was really difficult to get back, really difficult to get back. It was a major setback for us, because we actually really lost a lot of traffic. A lot of traffic that year, 2007, 2008. Well, we did earn the money, which we had to pay back, of course, because we couldn't have these links anymore, because otherwise we would be penalized by Google forever or so. So it was kind of a major downback, because at the time we actually were thinking about setting up the company, the proper company, and hiring people, and so on and so forth. It was kind of a big deal, right? But, we actually stuck with what we knew, and what we knew at the time is actually how to publish good content, because we really cared about quality from day one. So we actually started diversifying, we created Smashing Jobs, and kind of other things that were really helping the community as well, beyond the scope of the articles themselves. And what's really important is that at some point, it was really important for me to set up this publishing policy. And it might sound a bit superficial and even unnecessary, but we really decided to sit down for a few days and actually figure out what are the rules that we're going to stick to no matter what happens. So these are the rules that still exist, they're still available, they're still accessible from, probably 2007, where we actually just say, okay, we do something and we don't do something. For example, there is no hidden advertisement in our articles. All authors are getting paid. We don't have any sponsored articles. Our sponsors have no influence on the content of the magazine. We don't publish any PR advertisement. Don't take part in any kind of partner linkage systems, and so on and so forth. doesn't have to be like this for you, but actually figuring out your principles and your philosophy and what you're sticking to no matter what happens is really important, really important. So I'm not really a control freak, but I really do like having things under control. So when companies come to us, right, and they try to negotiate and they kind of initiate some kind of mutually beneficial partnerships, I'm always very skeptical about this, because they definitely want something in return. Well, this is obvious, it's a partnership, right? But I really don't want to let them kind of play around with my content, with our content in the magazine. It's kind of almost holy. They should not be allowed to touch it. The same way, if you look into advertising, advertisers should not have any influence on the content. It's really, really important. Like this strict separation of concerns is, I think, really, really important. I was in Berlin a few months ago, and I really hated the community that I ended up talking to there. I was speaking at a conference, and the conference was mostly dedicated to startups and young entrepreneurs. I hate this word, by the way, entrepreneurs. I really hate it. Because the point, my problem with them was that they were actually not talking about design. They were not talking about development. They were not talking about user experience. They were talking about exit strategies. You don't have a viable product yet, you don't have anything to show, but you're already thinking about exit strategy. And I think this is a totally wrong approach. It's perfectly fine to seek investors and to talk with investors, but I think, should not be thinking about exit strategy first. This is a totally wrong way of doing this. You have to create a product that you love. In the end, I'm really happy, and probably very lucky, to have created a product that I really love, that I spend every single day working on, because it really drives me. Right? It really drives me. I really like it. And I would never even consider thinking about the exit strategy at all. But, things change over time, things evolve over time. We spend more and more time doing really, really tough editorial work. This study took approximately 70 hours to prepare. Like going through different websites and creating a spreadsheet like this. We're actually looking into different typefaces used and the color and the font size and calculating, and with weird Firefox extensions back in the day. It took a lot of time and endless nights to do this. But the result was actually quite remarkable. It was 2 articles, but really exclusive articles. Nobody had them. Nobody had them. And it was really, really cool. And then we decided to do something else. Like we actually started working with the magazine, and then we started doing jobs, and then at some point we were thinking about creating a book. And creating a book actually was a really big adventure, because we did not anticipate how difficult and complicated it would become. So we decided at some point while working on the book that we cannot work separately, remotely. Because at this point we didn't have any office. I was working in Saarbrücken in Germany, right? And my colleague with whom I was actually co-created Smashing Magazine was working in Lübeck in northern Germany, and we maybe saw each other only twice in a lifetime, right? So all the conversation was happening via email or Skype, right? So we didn't have anything shared in terms of like shared office or something. But this book really changed everything, because we had to create an office. We just couldn't work like this anymore. So we decided to move to Freiburg, and this is the view from our office. I actually didn't show these pictures before, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, it's a bit more green. Well, it's winter after all. But this is the first day in the office. It looks pretty fancy, isn't it? So we had nothing. Well, I had my laptop. That's pretty good. But we didn't have anything to sleep on, because we were thinking that it would be easy to find a place in this damn town. But it wasn't, because it's really, really popular student city. So we had to sleep on this for a while. I thought, for a week or so. For 3 freaking months, we had to sleep on this stuff. It was really horrible, like really horrible. I did not like it at all. I actually wanted to move back, but it was too late at this point. Because I had my luggage and everything, of course, right? And we had a major problem. We had everything but displays. And you can't do anything without displays. That's kind of a deal breaker, right? You can't code, you can't write, you can't do anything without a display, which is kind of a big deal. But, we actually, made it through. And, over time things get more evolved and complicated, where we actually started thinking about the editorial plan. So we created, spreadsheets like this, where we had a really nice overview of all the articles and what is happening, who is working on the articles. And we introduced this system of experts panel, where everybody every single article that gets published has to get a really proper review first, which means you're submitting an article, this article goes into editorial review, technical review, and it needs to get at least 4.0 stars out of 5 in order to get published. That's a high barrier to get published. So you have 2 reviewers that are reviewing your article. They don't know you, don't know your article yet. They're reading your article and they give you an assessment of your article. And if you don't hit 4.0 on average, the article doesn't get published. This is why many people don't like me. Really, many people don't like me. Because they start working on an article and they spend maybe a month, maybe 2, maybe 3 working on drafts, reworking the drafts, and they don't hit 4.0 mark, and, well, then it doesn't get published. We do pay the authors for their work, but the article doesn't get published, which is kind of a big deal. So these articles, for example, once you get 2.0, once you get 5.0 stars, right, what do? Well, in that case, you would go into another review, right? But this, of course, as you can imagine, complicated things and also slowed things down immensely. Because now every article doesn't just get published, it goes through this editorial review, which takes quite some time. And also costs money, because now also reviewers have to, get money for reviews. So the expenses increased as well. But we kind of kept doing this and stuff like this, and it was really enormous, complicated article, which took a lot of time in the library, where our author had to go to the library and actually prepare it. It took quite some time. And in the end, we ended up, in 2012, doing a redesign, and redesigned, and this is how it actually came to be, right? But we still have all of those principles, like the publishing policy and the experts panel, everything deeply engraved in how we do things. And we actually learned a few lessons along the way. We don't have any contracts at all. Sometimes, of course, with authors or speakers at our conferences, but we tend to avoid contracts altogether. We don't even have any legal framework. So if we're working with an author, we're just working with an author. It's not like we're asking them to sign a contract first, or, we're not setting the deadlines or something. We're not setting the payment milestones. That's not like that at all. It's all based on mutual trust. And it worked all the time. Like over all these 10 years, we didn't have even one case when somebody had to go to court or had a lawsuit against us. It just worked, right? You don't need this legal mumbo jumbo. You also don't need deadlines. We don't have any deadlines. If an author starts working on an article, they just start and they finish whenever they finish. We will send them notifications every now and again, but they don't really have deadlines. We don't need many articles. We publish maybe 7, 8 a week, and that's perfectly fine. That works just fine. TechCrunch publishes maybe 40, 50 for a given week, but we don't really need it. It actually works. And you don't really need investors. We actually had inquiries about people willing to invest, but I really want to, to be independent. It's really important to me. I don't want to give up control. And I really want to be able to decide on my own what I want and what I don't, right? So in that case, we never needed investors because it's not like we're super rich, but we're enjoying ourselves. We do quality work. People respect us. I definitely enjoy, working on articles and with authors and with speakers and so on. So why do I need investors? If we were in a critical situation where we had to, to find investors, it would be a different story. But we don't really need it. I don't really care about, having a few more zeros in my bank account. I'm really happy at this point, so why should I, right? And also, you don't need to compromise. I mean, all of those principles, like editorial, you can guess how many weird and tough discussions I had with our marketing managers about all kind of things like sponsored content and sponsored tweets and selling your email list to the devil and whatever, right? Because it all brings money and they would also get the cut. But we just say, well, no, we had it stated since 2007 and I don't see any reason to change it. Why should we change it? I mean, it's all there. We believed in it 2007. Personally, I still believe it, so we wouldn't change it, right? And I think that people learn to appreciate and they learn to respect that, right? Because they know that we are standing behind that with both feet. We do have advertising, but we clearly market as advertising, and it's perfectly fine. We also say no to affiliate marketing, so things like, hey, you can get this product and would get this cut. We don't do this because we actually want to kind of emphasize our products instead of third-party products. The same story as, you see so many companies saying, hey, take part in this campaign, in our campaign, and you can win an iPad. I really don't understand that, to be honest. I can't see why iPad is so attractive to many people, but just provide something really tangible, something else, because everybody is offering an iPad, right? So what's the point of it? Just maybe, I don't know, offer an adventure of your lifetime, a visit to Mars or whatever, or go to South America with a first-class ticket or something. Not iPad. Who needs seriously, who needs an iPad today? iPads are always, are going down anyway. Doesn't matter. But you don't need that. You can do something else. Also, we never had sponsored posts, and I really don't want to have sponsored posts. We never had sponsored competitions. All the prizes that we have are kind of provided by us. We are paying for them. The same goes for press releases. So we have a press release radio button in our contact form. Do you know what happens if somebody hits it and submits the message? It goes right into spam. First, and second, it also gets reported by Akismet, or to Akismet, sorry, as spam. Because I really don't believe in press releases. If somebody's sending me this wonderful message saying, San Francisco, bullet point, this award-winning company has produced and released the marvelous product, with 5-star ranking, reviews, and so on and so forth. This is bullshit, seriously. This doesn't give me anything. If you want to communicate with us, just send us a little friendly tweet, because we monitor all the tweets anyway, and we'll check you out. You don't need to send out a press release saying how beautiful and marvelous you are. You should just show it, instead of actually saying that. So this is it. Never hit it. You will never get back again. This is really bad for you, right? What we learned, of course, is that quality content is very expensive. So we started paying authors a lot in the beginning. We were paying maybe $450 per article, and it really escalated very quickly because it added up, right? Even if you're publishing 5 to 7 articles a week, you can actually just multiply it with 400 or so, and you end up with a really nice sum, right? So in the end, even if you're being a bit more, how would I put it? Even if you're a little bit more cautious about it, and you say, well, overall, each article, including editorial costs, including proofreading costs, including reviewer costs, and so on. Because remember, we have this rule that everybody who is working on the product or working on an article has to get paid. We don't accept free articles. We reject free articles if they're free. Or reject articles if they're free, or if they're sponsored. We don't do this, right? And this is not a matter of, stupid principle that we have. It's more a matter of respect, because the work has to be respected. The value of that the work provides has to be respected. Somebody, involves it. Somebody uses their time to produce something, and it has to be respected. This goes for us as people who, put content online, but also for people who create content. So altogether, if you're just thinking a bit more pessimistically about the cost that you have, each article costs around $850. That times 20, if you publish just 5 articles a week, adds up to $17,000 per month just on the articles alone. It's kind of a lot of money, right? I published this article on Good Content is Too Valuable to Die because .NET Magazine, and you might have heard of .NET Magazine, they basically just killed around 2,000 articles because they were not getting enough traffic. And they left only 300 or 400, the most popular ones, that were getting the most traffic on the site. I think it's really horrible because I know from my own experience how expensive content is to produce. And I had so many really cool articles bookmarked in my Delicious or feed or whatever from .NET Magazine. Now they're all gone, right? I have to go to web.archive.org to get to them. This is really stupid. This content is really difficult, really expensive to produce. So you could say, well, of course, but you have advertising, so this should be your backbone. I don't think that advertising revenue should be a backbone of any for any website or any application. It's just not viable, and it's not scalable. And it's also very fragile. If something happens with advertising, you're really in a tough position. This is the position we are in right now. I mean, I know from the feeling that I'm getting here that most of you are using ad blockers. Am I correct? Adblock Plus, maybe Ghostery? You out now, right? So how many of you do not use an ad blocker? do not use an ad blocker. Really?
This company is an online advertising platform developer.
Great.
That might be the reason we don't use that.
So you can't use an ad blocker, or you don't want to use an ad blocker?
We believe in marketing online.
Okay, we're going to have a tough conversation later. But the thing here is, well, I mean, ad blockers are really on the rise, right? So we actually, when we did a redesign back in 2012, we had only 12% of people using an ad blocker. Right now on Smashing Magazine, because we have a savvy audience, like people like you probably, we have approximately 58% of our users using an ad blocker. 58%, and it's actually really growing. It's growing like 1.5% every month. So we're expecting, pretty much everybody to be using ad blockers in 2 years, right? And all those traditional ways of advertising that you have in the sidebar and so on, they're just not going to work long term, which is why we're kind of setting on the products, on the byproducts of our work, instead of advertising. Because advertising I really don't believe that advertising will survive in the form that we have it today. And I actually really do encourage you to use ad blocker if you don't use an ad blocker yet. Because your website performance, or your web experience in general, will improve significantly. And it's not your fault that you have to use an ad blocker. It's advertisers' fault, because they're pushing advertising so hard beyond, good for you, beyond the edges of what should be done. I mean, it's really way too aggressive in many ways. And if you're actually going to a random website, more or less, you'll find a lot of really wonderful light boxes and pop-ups and advertising all over the place. This is not cool, and it's just a very simple and actually regular way of users fighting for their rights, getting to the content. And of course, I know what you're saying, but as an advertiser, you would say, well, we're just going to block ad blocker users. We can fight back. This is fine. And you might have seen stuff like this already on the web, right? When you actually go to a website and you're using an ad blocker and it says, you can't access the site unless you deactivate your ad blocker. Right? Have you seen this before? And this is great, isn't it? It's like you really want to get to the content of that site and you're blocked from accessing the content because you're using an ad blocker, which you're using only because you really don't want to the advertising to be blocking you from accessing this content. This is just so ridiculous, right? However, there is an interesting story. Okay, I'm really getting away from this, but it's really important, I think, to say that. Because I was working with a company, with a big company, publisher, and they actually introduced exactly this model where you actually are blocked from accessing the content if you are using an ad blocker. So they decided, okay, so we don't really want to spend money on people who are using ad blockers because advertising is really important to us. So we're going to block them. So how did it work out? Well, they did lose a lot of traffic, but they gained advertising traffic. So overall, the money they're getting now is higher, is larger than they used to have, but they lost approximately 1/3 of the users. But they don't care, because they still get a lot of advertising revenue. If this is your strategy, you're ready to just drop out of 1/3 of your users for advertising revenue, it's probably not going to work long term, right? So you have to be really careful about this. So I really don't think that advertising should be a reliable, or kind of the most important backbone of your site application. But this is horrible. This is really horrible. If you're not using an ad blocker, this is going to be your experience, and it's really, really bad. Unfortunately, we are trying to move away from advertising, and it's very, very hard. How many of you would be willing to pay, let's say, 2 or 3 euros every month to read your favorite magazine? Doesn't have to be Smashing Magazine, of course. 2 or 3 euros for an ad-free experience. Okay, who would be willing to pay 5 euros? 10 euros? Oh, this is getting difficult, right? Well, the thing is, we also have one important thing, which I think is really important when you're talking about getting money from your customers. It should not be a donation. I think it really should be a transfer to some degree. You should be providing some kind of value, transfer some kind of value. It's not enough to just say, hey, please support us because we want to be ad-free, we want to keep our content on the site. It's not going to work long-term. If you want it to work long-term, you have to provide a service or something as a benefit. So people appreciate that they see that they're getting something. This is what we're trying to do right now as well. So ad blockers are fine. It's not your problem, it's our problem, and this is a problem we're going to solve. This is why we produce books and ebooks and run workshops and conferences and so on, because it helps us move away from advertising, right? And recently we also started doing consulting and training, running in-house workshops on site when we go into companies and try to solve problems. This is kind of what it looks like. I really like to make people stressed out. I don't know what it is about me, but I really like it. So when we go into companies, we do make them work hard. So I had this nice project in the European Parliament, and I made them all, and you can imagine like senior designers, senior developers with a lot of experience, just cutting and prototyping and talking about design system and atoms. That's really, really great, right? And I think that we all learned a lot along the project. So we're kind of doing projects like this. And when it comes to the process, it's actually very simple. We do use all the old traditional sticky notes, and we also use red labels, red dot labels, red dot stickers. Many of you will be familiar with them. Because what I know from my experience is that whenever you actually start working on a project and you propose a draft somewhere or a sketch or something, and everybody can participate and provide feedback, it really kills good ideas. And people really don't like it because they get killed, basically, right? So instead, we have this, we introduced the notion of silent meetings. So in our meetings, nobody is allowed to speak up. Nobody is allowed to say anything. Instead, what we do is everybody has a few dots like this, the red ones, approximately 15, 20 per person. So a person comes up with an idea, they present the idea, they put the sketches or whatever on the board, and they walk away. Right? Nobody is allowed to criticize, nobody is allowed to kill this idea, but instead, because they have these dots, they can actually put dots on interesting things or interesting places that they find compelling. So the bad ideas die silently, because nobody's allowed to speak, but good ideas get highlighted very much like this, right? With little dots. It's very much like heat map, if you like. And I guess that many of you are familiar with this, but it really helps to kind of extract good ideas and dismiss bad ideas without having the entire team being, mad about something. So this is really helpful. And we also like these little notes because you can't go into high fidelity. So sometimes they will be that small, and then we have a few ideas here and there. Just because if you're really constrained by the size of the paper sheet, it forces you to come up with good ideas. And sometimes we also use a countdown, where we say, so we're going to have 2 minutes for first sketch. So the entire team has only 2 minutes to figure out to produce something, right? It really forces us to be creative, which I think is really good. Oh, maybe I'm just me who likes stress. I don't know. We also use Slack. How many of you are using Slack? Many of you, right? So we actually really moved away from email to some degree and also moved away from Skype towards Slack, and basically all the conversations, which is great. We also use Trello to organize some tasks, and we're using it for articles, but also for technical development, pretty much for everything. It's pretty cool. A few last things. We have everybody gets paid policy, I mentioned that. We even introduced a system where if somebody forgets to, this is kind of stupid, if somebody forgets to submit an invoice, they're getting a follow-up by us, penalizing them and asking them to charge less, or more, I'm not even sure, charge less if they don't submit in time. So we actually do have a follow-up, so please do submit your invoice, please do submit your invoice. And we're getting, really nasty emails. Why the hell do you want me to submit the invoice all of a sudden? And so on. And when we don't have a right idea in place, we do one little thing that always works. I mean, sometimes, you have these team members and they all sit down and they try to figure out what to do next. No. We drop it all and we go to a bar or to a pub or anywhere where there is alcohol. And we go there and everybody, we're enjoying the evening and we're talking about things and we're thinking about, what the future will be with politics, sports, football, Champions League, which is playing right now, and you instead are listening to me. That's really weird. Right? And things like that. And then at some point somebody, and this moment, at some point somebody says, you know what we should do? Right? And this is the moment when a great idea emerges, right? Because that thing that this person is saying next will decide the nature of the product that you're going to build, right? Because this is going to be a crazy idea, but it's very likely that it's going to be a very interesting one, at least one that you can build upon. So always looking out for this, instead of actually really setting out and trying to design by committee. I learned that I can't know everything. I'm trying very hard, but I'm failing all the time. However, sometimes you end up meeting really strange people. I was in Moscow, and in Moscow one front-end developer approached me, and he was really complaining a lot about the speed of development and design and changes in the community, because everything is happening so rapidly and it's changing all the time, so he couldn't keep up. So his idea to fix this would be to listen to podcasts at 2.2 speed, because he can learn more, like in double speed, because it's still, he can still learn pretty much everything. But because the commute's like 15 minutes or so every day, it really fits in nicely within this commutation in the bus. So he was recommending 2.2 speed. 2.4 is a bit too fast for him, but 2.2 is really important. So I don't know if you have to go this way. You can try it out, and then maybe you can learn something. I don't know. But it's probably not absolutely necessary. It's okay to not know everything. I think that I'm a jack of all trades. I have a good global picture and overview of what's going on. I do know what Node.js is. I do know a little bit about search engine optimization. I do know Photoshop a little bit and other things. But it's not like I'm an expert in each of them. I do know some things really well, like front-end development mostly, and responsive design and stuff like that. But it's not like I know everything, and it's perfectly fine. As long as you can navigate and you know that if you need information, you will know where to find it. This is what matters most. We also use shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, and I really like it. Because we set up a list of many different shortcuts using text expander. So if somebody wants to send an email to somebody, it actually really improves your speed. It's really, really great. Do it for pretty much everything you can, because it will help you. Okay. Again, I have people who really don't like me. Smashing Mac has the fiercest editing and review process for articles I've ever seen. I trust the content more as a result. Have you written for them? If yes, it might have been very tedious, lengthy, and exhausting, right? Or is it just me? And then he continues, well, I think there are many authors who would love to write on Smashing Magazine, but are pretty demoralized after the first work. When I hear it, I'm so happy inside. It's like I'm really happy. Because my work is, my job is not to be liked. My job is to publish good articles, and if it means that people are demoralized before that, it's even better. Well, it's not better, but you know what I mean. This is what's important to me. All right? Okay. Should be probably getting to the end. All right. Okay. Just 5 more minutes. I think this is one of the best learnings I took away from one of my colleagues back in the day. When he was also kind of mentoring me at the time, he was saying this thing: you should always under-promise whatever you do to your clients or to somebody that you're working with, and you should always over-deliver. So whenever we promise something, we always try to do it a little bit better, maybe 10% better than expected, and also maybe 10% faster than expected, right? Just to be remembered. And we actually keep doing that in pretty much everything we do, be it articles, be it conferences, and so on and so forth. Always under-promise and always over-deliver. And recently we started believing in tradition that actually really matters a lot. So you might have seen our desktop wallpapers, which are now running for 7 years or so, but also, when we're doing Smashing Newsletter and so on, but we also started doing this stuff. How many of you have seen this before? We have these mystery riddles, where we announce a riddle, and it's usually pretty tough, and you can guess, that, okay, maybe I should explain first what it does. Basically, we're posing a challenge for you, and you have to solve it. You have to kind of get from one level to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, to the final result. And then if you get all the keys, and all the keys are right, you can tweet them out to our account, and you're getting a fancy prize. So recently we had a prize being a conference ticket to our New York conference, including the flights, including the accommodation, including our books. And it's not an iPad, it's not an iPad, but it's a really fancy experience that you're getting from the door you're living at home, to New York or whatever, kind of hanging out with, at the conference and so on. And people really anticipated, really liked it. I see people really hitting the refresh button because it's now the time when this challenges are going to be released. So the way we do it is, well, you have this GIF, an animated GIF, and then you have to move from this GIF to another one, just using your intuition. Or, of course, you can actually get some hints as well, because you just have to read out the file names, right? So based on the file name and your intuition, you have to do something. So what would you do? So here, if you look into this file, it says, look into the house.gif. Look into the house.gif. How would you look into the house? It's an animated GIF. You can try to do whatever, crazy with it. It will not bring you anywhere. It's just a GIF. I mean, you know a GIF, right? So how would you move from this level to the next one? So, sorry? Okay, you could look into the source maybe, try to figure out what's going on there. You could look in Photoshop, maybe there is a hidden level, a layer somewhere underneath or something like that. For this specific riddle, we have like 5 for now. You have to actually, change the file name. It was really tough. Think about poor testers who had to go through this misery. So it says, look into the house.gif, and then if you type in enter the house.gif, you're getting to the next level, and you're in the house, right? And then from there you have to do, I'm not even sure what you have to do. You have to just figure it out. So here you could say, well, turn on the lamp or turn off the lamp, and then move to the next level, right? And sometimes we also have these hidden things happening here as well. Then you maybe want to look into the carpet.gif, and then you move into the next one, into the next one, into the next one, and so on. And at some point, if you're lucky and you look into the picture, it says, tweet us with the hashtag #FeelSmashing, right? This is the first key or so, and then you're moving to the next one. And this has been really difficult. It was like a second riddle we did, but poor people complained so much. I got so many angry emails, and you know me by this point. I was really happy about this, right? Like really happy, because here you say catch the birds.gif, and it's an animated GIF. How are you going to catch the birds? I mean, well, right? It will take a while. On average, every riddle is supposed to take at least 1.5 hours to solve. So we are really pushing it's hard. So it kind of takes some time. Just have to search for do not drink hot or catch the birds on Twitter. The @handle, @catchthebirds. We reserved like 55 Twitter handles. So in order to move from one level to another, you have to actually play with the handles. I'm still getting emails from 55 accounts, all forwarded to my account, about all kind of new followers, spam bots or whatever, to 55 Twitter accounts. It's really, really bad. It's really crazy. I had to create so many filters for it. And yes, if you at some point actually go to catch the birds, you will find a clue to the next level, and so on and so forth. So we introduced all of these mystery riddles, not because it's fun for me, as you know me at this point, but also because it's great for creating tradition. People are expecting that. They know that before a conference there's going to be a new challenge, a new riddle like this. They can win some really nice prizes. So we have sometimes teams building up where they actually have something like a hackathon, where they all sit together, like 7 or 8 people, looking at this little GIF, trying to figure out what to do next. That's great, right? And they keep tweeting us like, so when is it going to start? It's great. People expect that. They anticipate that. It's really, really cool. And some of them are really actually making a history, because there is a guy who actually decided to print out all of the animated GIFs and put them, and one of them wanted to tattoo them as well. You don't have to go to this, there, but, it's pretty cool. So, yeah. So, for example, if you look here, I shouldn't be spending too much time on this. It's just a book that is actually upside down. So you have to go to twitter.com/turn the book, flip the book or something like that. Then you're moving to the next level and so on. Kind of tough, but it's fun. Okay. This was the fun one, actually. Yeah, okay. I should be closing at this point. I know that you're tired, that's okay. So, just to finish off, just 2 little stories I want to share with you. 2013, my father got sick, and it was a very difficult time for me because I wasn't sure if I actually want to do smashing at all. I kind of pulled back, and I just started re-evaluating what I was doing. So at the time, in March, I was, I would buy things I don't need. I would buy CDs I would never listen to and books I would never read and, things like that, just trying to find something new. And it's kind of weird because I really didn't feel like I'm happy at this point, and I didn't feel that actually smashing is what I wanted to do. And I asked myself, so if I didn't earn any money from this, like 7 years ago, right, when the Smashing magazine started, would I still be doing the same thing? And if I did, like, how would I do it, right? Because as you can imagine, 7 years pass, and in the end, when you start working on a project like this, you're a designer, you're a developer, you're an author, you're an editor, you're everything. Then over time, it really grows. So instead of actually doing this stuff that you really enjoy doing, you find yourself managing people, right? You are there to hire people, you are there to fire people, you're there to talk about hiring people, to talk about firing people, instead of actually doing something that you wanted to do in the first place. And this really annoyed me because I didn't want to do this, right? So approximately 1 month or so, I was literally doing nothing special until at some point, I remember this vividly, I woke up at 5:26 a.m. and I got my coffee and I actually started just, reading, and then I stumbled upon Smashing magazine and I started reading articles that were published that month without me on Smashing magazine, and I really, sucked in. It was really interesting again, and I discovered that this is exactly what I actually wanted to do, like read the articles or edit articles or write articles. So I stepped away as a CEO, and we hired somebody to do the CEO stuff, like managing people and so on. And believe me, this was the best thing I did in years. Really stepping down as a CEO was the best thing I did in years. It really helped me grow, learning new stuff, writing more articles, editing articles, getting to connect with people. Because as a CEO, I wouldn't be able to do something like this here today. Because I would have to think about strategy and whatever, right? It's really, really helped me. So I actually got back as editor-in-chief again. And my main concern today is really just editing articles, writing articles, getting to know authors, speakers at conferences, and so on. And the magazine is doing much, much better as a result. And then, again, coming back here, well, it's not like I'm, traveling like this all the time and enjoying life. I do feel, however, that every single day that I spend, I can choose where I'm working from, which is, of course, great, and it's a big privilege to do this. But the most important privilege for me, and the most important kind of detail that really makes the entire experience so worthwhile for me, is I'm getting to do what I really love. And this is really important. I mean, I know that there are many articles saying that, and I know that many people say, well, whatever. But I think it's really important. If you really don't like what you're doing, you have to quit. I mean, you really have to quit. I didn't like what I was doing, and I had no idea if this new CEO would be doing a good job. It could have ruined the magazine altogether, right? Because you're trusting your baby basically into somebody else's hands. That's really risky, right? But I would feel quite miserable if I was still doing this. I know that for sure. So it's probably me who would be bringing it, killing this baby in the end. So this is really, really great. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really happy about this. And yes, you get to travel a lot. And this is where I actually started, like back then, 2 years ago, without any apartment. It's a lot of cities. And as you can see, Vilnius is appearing quite a lot here. Because I really like coming back to Vilnius. I really liked it. And my girlfriend is in Vilnius as well, so it kind of made it also worth it, right? And you get to some really crazy places. Like Abisko was probably the highlight. Because, I mean, seriously, all the things I said are not so important, probably, but this is important. So if you have some time, go to Abisko, because this is probably the weirdest place that you can ever imagine. So Abisko has 86 inhabitants. 86 inhabitants, has one tourist station and one restaurant, and that's it. And that's great. It's not that I don't like people, it just, sometimes people don't, you don't want to see people. So you can actually spend 1 month there, it's going to change you forever, because the nature is beautiful, right? And the internet connection is amazing. It's probably the best in Sweden because there is nobody else, literally, right? And it's really, really great place to be. So, 86 people, and they don't want to talk to you because they have other work to do. So that's pretty cool. That's really, really great. Yeah, everything else is, well, a biscuit the best, that's for sure. And then we also got an email from South Africa from a teacher who was actually teaching interaction design in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And they didn't have any teaching material in school. So what they would do, and what they still do today, is printing out every single article that gets published on Smashing and use it as a teaching material at school. When you get emails like that, it really changes everything. That's really cool. I mean, literally cool. And also when I get to meet people that I maybe met, I don't know, 5 years ago, who actually started reading us, and when I see as they're growing, this is what's way more important than, money you could get from investors or something. That's really, really cool. And then I have this guy. He kept sending me messages on Facebook, like all the time, every single day, because he's from India and he doesn't have a lot of money, but he really had this idea of becoming a web designer. He heard that web design is cool, right? So he really wanted to be a web designer. He kept sending me messages. So I said, whatever. So we just sent him some books, right? And he keeps sending me messages now with books every single day. It's just unbelievable, right? But he's doing something, and he sent me a message recently that he co-founded a new company, and he's really proud of it. He's like 13 or so, right? But he's really, really happy. And then he sent me this quote: I don't know what my life is going to be like, but I want to become a web designer when I grow up. It wasn't like that for me when I started out, right? And it's really, again, things like that really change you. It's really important. Even a small email like that, it really, really makes a big difference. So with this in mind, we had a kind of a big journey from the start to now, and it's been almost 10 years. I learned a few things along the way, but most importantly, I learned what not to do, right? And I hope that some of these lessons actually got through today as well. So I'm not going anywhere yet. I have no idea how we're doing timing. We'll have Champions League coming up. But, no, I'm kidding. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. And I hope that your project, your startup, your company, whatever it is you're working, will actually succeed in the long term as well, especially if you actually establish your principles, establish your guidelines, and stick to them no matter what happens. And they will be happy too. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions from audience?
Hey, what was the hardest moment for you, and how have you handled it?
So the question is, what was the hardest moment, and how did we handle it? I think the hardest problem is when, again, as I mentioned, advertising is very unstable, right? So we had these moments where you start thinking about, can your publishing policy or your principles survive, given that you have advertising revenue really decreasing immensely? And this is still tough because, again, as I said, we have 60% of advertising revenue being cut off just because you and me are using ad blockers, right? And it's kind of a big deal. It forces us to really become creative with our products. So this is probably the toughest because you can't really make somebody buy your product. And you can't just all of a sudden come up with a crazy idea that will sell. You never know, right? And sometimes you might come up with something, invest money, and then it will not, turn out not to be the right way. But I think that what's really critical there, and this is what we're discussing at this point as well, is to be honest. Because before we do something that would violate our principles, like sponsored content or whatever, we would actually write an article and trying to figure out a solution with the community, right? And maybe we would do something like this if we're really in a critical position for a few months, but definitely not long term. At least, well, this is what our principles are for. We also had some internal debates. So I did mention that we actually moved away from lists, like the 53 wonderful CSS techniques or something like that, or 50 beautiful examples of winter photography, to a more profound magazine experience, right? So if you're coming to Smashing Magazine today, you'll find much more profound professional articles. This costs us a lot of traffic, because as you can guess, something like, 50 amazing photos of India works better than sketching, prototyping tools for web designers, right? So it cost us a lot of traffic, but we gained a lot of respect in the community. Because you can't sell traffic to people who are interested in pictures of India, but you can sell products to people who are genuinely interested in UX or product development or design. So we lost a lot of traffic, actually, but we gained a lot of customers, which is kind of important, I think. This was also a very difficult decision because we did lose traffic, right? And right now we have this conversation, should we be doing more popular stuff to gain traffic or not? And I think that personally, if you have people that really trust your brand and who are really interested in your products, it's more important than having a lot of traffic. It's kind of the other way around than what advertisers do with ad blocking, so to say. Does it answer your question anyway?
Yeah, we have one here.
Yep.
Hey, thank you for the speech. It was very interesting.
Thank
I
you.
have two questions to clarify. So what are your main revenue channels? Because it's unclear. And how did you go through the financial crisis of 2008?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, what are our main what are our main revenue channels? Well, it's still advertising, to be honest. So, advertising makes up, I would probably lie now, but 40 to 50% of our revenue, which is still a lot. So we rely on advertising. That's one thing. The other thing is conferences, of course, and books. This is what we're producing. We also produce ebooks, and we also do in-house consulting and workshops. This is what we started doing recently. Because we established a brand, companies trust our brand, and as a result, us, consulting. That's really helpful. But the main idea there is diversifying. So we're just trying to find different areas where we could just, bring the revenue back to the company, so we can maintain the magazine. We do know, however, of course, that if the magazine is weak, then all of the other revenue channels will not work. So we're trying to invest more into magazine than, let's say, in smashing jobs or so. Just because this is the core. If the magazine isn't strong enough and people don't come to the magazine to read articles, they will not hire us for consultancy or something like that. This is kind of important. Books, I would say that events, conferences, and workshops and consulting are the most important after advertising, and then come the books, and then come the ebooks. Do you actually buy ebooks at all these days? Many people, of course, bought ebooks in the past, but do you regularly buy ebooks? Right? So we see many people preferring printed books over ebooks. So they would buy either both, or they would buy printed book but not ebook. So it's actually only a relatively small portion of people buying ebooks all the time, which is, we invested a lot into ebooks as well and didn't quite work out. And 2008, to be honest, 2008 was the best year we had. Seriously, because we had, the magazine was 2 years old, we had a lot of traffic coming in, and we had a lot of advertising revenue coming in as well, right? So we didn't really notice it in a way. We noticed it rather now because of ad blockers, but not then because of advertising. More questions? Any mysterious questions? No?
Thank you for the talk.
Sure.
I wanted to ask, how do you pick up the themes to write about, and do you get inquiries from people writing you, could you write about this and that? What's your methodology?
Right. So usually we tend to, so as I said, our focus kind of moved a little bit from these popular articles to really practical articles. So we tend to either find people who are doing something interesting, maybe work on a project or whatever. We also accept people kind of proposals from people who just want to write for us. So the most important thing is not that you write well, because we have editors and proofreaders who will help you. It's more that you have worked on an interesting thing that you want to share. Or maybe it's an open source project, or maybe it's something within your agency, maybe it's something within your company, maybe you have an interesting company that you co-worked with or whatever, maybe it's a venture, I don't know, it doesn't matter. As long as you have something interesting to share, you can always share something about your process, about your tools, about your design skills, about your prototypes, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, and so on. We accept pretty much any idea. The most important point is that the key takeaways are interesting. So it shouldn't be so we just took Twitter Bootstrap and plugged a few things together and released something. Because if you are working on a product, you will always encounter something weird and crazy. Even, again, in European Parliament, I come in and they're always talking about the train project. And I'm coming to the European Parliament, they have this little European Parliament website and 83 other websites as a part of European Parliament website. And all of a sudden they're talking about about the trains. I'm like, trains? trains in, there. What's the point? As it turned out, you probably know this moment when you're actually talking to somebody and they keep talking about something, you have no idea what, but you just miss the window of opportunity to ask them what they're talking about, right? It's a little bit uncomfortable to, at this point ask, can you please, So I did that, right? And then at some point they keep talking about the trains, I have no idea. So I kind of asked the guy, so I don't know, maybe I didn't get the memo, I don't know. Can you just explain what the trains project is all about? And he starts saying, well, Juncker is so interested in trains as a metaphor for the Europe moving forward. So he wants to use a train as a metaphor for the entire front page website and so on. And this is why we're going to have SVG animation with trains and stuff like that. And like, good to know, right? Because I literally had no idea. So even little details like that are really interesting. So you can always find something to write about. If you want to, that's, you can always write about something. And we accept as long as you get 4.0. But, I mean, it's not that tough. You just have to write, you just have to know what you're writing about. Any more questions?
I would like to say thank you for your product, for Smashy Magazine. I like to read it, I like to follow up. And I would like to ask about front-end development. Like, this product should be built by strong team, by persons who have skills for that, professional skills. And I would like to ask how you hire them and how you, what values of developers, especially for front-end developers, you appreciate, like soft skills maybe.
Right.
No, I don't like to ask about professional skills, like how it's JavaScript level or HTML. I would like to ask about personal skills.
Right. So this is a very interesting question, because just to answer it, let me just go a little bit further than that. I think it's really important when you start working with, when you're actually working on a new product, it's very easy to think that you should hire ninja developers, like really high-end, cutting-edge developers or designers to do something really cool, right? And you're going to throw money at it just to make sure that you are getting the best result you can. I think it's very dangerous. In many projects I was working on, you have a nice team, a nice medium-sized team, doing a product, working on a product, and the moment you actually bring in a high-end, cutting-edge developer or designer, he or she ruins everything. He ruins the entire culture in the company. And everybody hates him or her, and he literally hates everybody. So, and this is really bad for the entire product, because it doesn't really have a voice after all. Right? So instead, what we are looking for is trying to kind of find people who really fit within the team. So when we do there are different options, right? So when we do consultancy, we're trying to just find people who are on the same level. We don't have ninja developers who know everything about everything, or like everything about JavaScript. They should be knowledgeable, but they should be, what I think is more important, that they're willing to learn. Because very often you end up with ninja developers thinking that they know everything and they don't want to learn. They don't want to spend too much time kind of exploring the really little tweaks and gimmicks of a CMS that is in place, right? So if people are loyal and want to learn, that's great. That's much more valuable than having skills. And when it comes to actually setting up the team for us to work on our product, well, we do have our team, of course, already. We have a front-end developer, Marco, in-house. And then we tend to find people who would fit best. And it's, again, often based on the experience in the magazine industry somehow. So we're looking for people who would know a little bit about print design, who would know a little bit about art design, art direction, things like that. I never paid a lot of attention to the grades people bring on the table in their CV. To be honest, I never actually read CVs. If they have some open source projects they can show, or if they have a side project, and I think it's really, really important, like really critically important. If you want to show your skills, don't put too much time and effort into your CV, kind of showing your wonderful grades and so on. It's more important to just work on a side project. It could be something as simple as, I don't know, maybe you like calendars, so collect calendars and put them online and write about them and what makes them so special. Things like that. Or maybe just design calendars if you're a designer. Or maybe just, create a little library of something, not like, Twitter Bootstrap library, but something small, like touch gestures library that really is accessible and is fast and works well, it will bring you attention. This is way more important than having a perfect CV. Well, this is my experience. So when we try to find people, we're actually looking out for the project, we're looking for the experience, but not necessarily at recommendations. It's another story. Like, for example, in Germany there is a law, if you're recommending, write a letter of recommendation, you're not allowed to write anything negative, right? So, you know, it's written kind of passively, aggressively, positively somehow, right? So you try to read between the lines, and you never know. So I never read recommendations either. Well, in Germany, of course, I don't know what it is like here, because nobody will write something bad in your letter of recommendation, probably. Well, please don't hire them, because, you know, this is not how it works, I guess, right? Does it answer the question to some degree? Right.
Did you ever have any competitors that were trying to do the same things that you have to fight for readers?
That's a good point. Did we ever have competitors that actually tried to do the same thing? Actually, we had to move away from this list because there were many websites doing exactly the same thing, like 60 beautiful pictures of, I don't know, Winterland or whatever. And there were like many blog posts like this and everywhere. So we had some sites that actually tried to do something similar, and they failed because it's really expensive. Like, producing content like this is really, really expensive. If you think about, you know, the cost you get, then it's like $600, $700 per article, per article, and you don't know if it succeeds or not. Especially if you're starting out, you have no idea if it's going to get any traffic at all or not, right? So it's really, really risky. I don't think that we have competitors at this point, because we have, I mean, there are magazines like Listapart and SitePoint, but SitePoint is doing something different at this point, where they have the 99 Designs marketplace. We have Envato, Tuts Plus, and PSD Tuts, and so on and so forth. And they actually also moved away from blogging or from publishing towards providing stuff like premium tutorials and video courses. So at this point, with our conferences, we are kind of in, not in a unique place, but it's not like we have to be afraid of somebody, or they have to be afraid of us, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not a CEO. How the hell do I know?
Do we have more questions? No, I guess. Okay, so thank you very much.
Sure. Oh, one more thing I have to mention, sorry. I have to mention. Actually, we have a meetup coming up tomorrow. Because when I moved to Vilnius, I tried to find a front-end meetup or UX meetup, and I couldn't find one. I mean, there is Vilnius.js, but it's not that big, so I thought maybe you can create one. So we created a smashing front-end meetup. The first one was in January. Actually, 200 people or so showed up. It was really crowded. I did not expect that. It was pretty cool. And really good feedback, and it was actually really, really well received. So we decided to do another one. So maybe do it a regular thing. So the second meetup is coming up tomorrow at 6:30 at Liverpool Indie Bar. And actually 152 people are going, hopefully. You never know, right? You never know. So if you want to join us, feel free to join us. You can just go to Smash by Meetup, or just search for Smashing Frontend Bar Camp on Facebook, right? Would love to see you tomorrow as well. But, you know, just have to mention that. Not a big deal.
Okay, so thank you very much. And also, a big thank you for Adform for hosting us today and providing beer and snacks. And I think we have some time here to just talk to each other and finish the beer. So please, if you have time, do not leave and just talk to each other. And thank you.